Hi guys, it's Katie here again from Creativa. I've been absent for a little while, but I have been busy and I've recorded this video. It's not so much a tutorial as it is a sort of a process video, and I'm using a set of SVGs that I've created, and it's just called a journal pack, and I'm using this collection of random bits of paper that I have here to make in the end 2 journals. So I don't know if you have the same problem as me, but when I make something, I end up with all of these tiny little pieces that I can't bear to throw away, but I'm not actually sure what I'm ever going to do with them again, with all these little small pieces. So I've decided to make a really concerted effort to start using up all of these scraps and clearing them away and making something fabulous out of them. So right now I am just going through this Kaisercraft, what's left of this Kaisercraft pack. It's called Memory Lane. So as you can see, I just have all these sort of small pieces, not really big enough to do anything with. Some of those will be good for tags. But I'm just sorting through all my pieces. I've put all of my really small pieces to one side. On the other side, I've put some bigger pieces. And then up on the top right hand side, I'm putting all of these pieces here that I think I might be interested in fussy cutting. So I'm just going through, sorting out all my scraps now. And for these journals, I actually decided that I was going to make a really concerted effort to not distress any of the edges. So what I did instead was pretty much coffee stained just about everything. So once I'd finished trimming all of these out, and right now I'm just trimming the strips off, I took everything and dunked it in the coffee and stuck it in the oven and called it done. So that was actually really liberating, not to pick up a distress tool for this whole project. So I always have these cut out pages left because I don't tend to use them all that often, and I want to use them, so I'm just going through and cutting everything down to size. Some of them I don't really use very often. I'm not a card maker, so I don't use the ones that say happy birthday or thank you, but I did do things like cut the happy off them or cut the wishes off. The thank you ones I just threw away. So now I'm just going through my pile of things that I'm going to fussy cut. So even though some of those big flowers, I've only got half the flower, I'll still fussy cut around them because I think they look really good if you stick them to the side of a page or the side of a pocket, something like that. And just get creative with how you use those. So I did decide to fussy cut all these tiny little flowers, which was madness. But once I fussy cut all of these pieces, I went and gave them a little dunk in the coffee as well. So everything pretty much was coffee stained. The little lace pieces up the top that I've fussy cut are actually from the strips that I cut off the top of my scrapbook pages, and I ended up using all of those as well, and so I was pretty happy that I managed to get so far and use so much of these little scrap pieces that I've had laying around for ages. So once I've finished fussy cutting all of these, here's my little shot of all my little bits that I've cut out, and I'm so proud of myself. And then I also had this little bag of collectibles that I'd bought and never used, so I've just popped those to the side. And now I'm just having a look at the full length scrapbook paper that I've got left. And because I don't use 12 by 12 pages, or I don't make albums that are 12 by 12, I find these kind of pages really quite difficult to use. So I've actually decided to cut the top off these door pages, and I'm going to use the bottom section as a page and cut that top off. So then I'm going to fold that in half and make that a page. I had intended to use the top section as little inserts or something like that, so In the end I didn't use them, but I have still cut them out, so I can keep these for another day. So I've just gone through these door pages and trimmed out that section in the middle, and I did the same for the big sections on my right hand side as well. So look at that, I'm just admiring my little collection of bits and pieces that I've cut out, which made embellishing and filling my journals so easy. And that little box that I had them in is something that I recently developed or designed. Actually, it was quite a while ago. I just haven't released it yet, so I promise that I will do that one soon, because that one's fun. So now I'm going to deal with all my little scrappy bits. And first of all, I'm just going to tear up some text pages that I can use as a part of my collage. So this is a gardening book. It was a lovely old book, but you know, my gardening's not flash, and it's not going to get better for reading a book. So I'm just relegating it to the junk. And so I'm just finding some text bits that I can use for my collaging. And underneath that you can see I have this roll of brown paper. It's painter's masking paper, and I bought it from the hardware store. It's super thin and it makes fabulous pages in your journals and books, but it's also awesome for collaging on, because you can just collage and collage and collage these great big long sheets, and then you can trim them down to fit whatever it is that you want. So it's also really thin, which means that it's fabulous, because when I'm done I will trim some of this down to 12 by 12 sheets that I can, well, they're not 12 by 12, I think they're 12 by 11, because it's not quite 12 inches long or deep or wide, you know. It's not quite that. Anyway, I trim it down to, I think it's 12 by 11 sheets of paper, and then I can put those straight onto my Cricut mat and cut things, all the pockets and things like that straight out from those sheets. So I'm just going through now with all my little bits, and some of them I'm making smaller and I'm just ripping them up and I'm not distressing it, and it's just so freeing to not be distressing anything. And I am a fan of the square or rectangle pieces, so I'm just popping them down like a patchwork, like an old-fashioned patchwork quilt. And I'm just choosing random bits and popping them down, making sure that I don't have two of the same pattern too close together. Every now and then I just put in a piece of text paper just to break it up a little bit, and I just work my way along this sheet, filling it up. I try not to overlap them too much so that it's not too thick, so that I can easily have my Cricut cut it out. I really enjoy doing this collaging. It's just super relaxing. I think I'm probably watching a bit of Netflix while I'm doing this, and just sticking all of these pieces down. And you know, even though you're not putting any thought into it whatsoever, it always turns out looking fabulous. You just can't go wrong. And then instead of having all of these tiny little pieces, you end up with full sheets of paper that you can use. So this does take me quite a while, but I'll show you at the end what it looks like. And then I take it to my sewing machine and sew around parts of it, and that just finishes it off really nicely. Okay, so here I have finished my collaging, and I've ended up with this really long roll of collage paper. So at this point I think I decided I've got enough here that I could easily make 2 journals. So for that first piece I've actually cut it to 40 centimetres long so that I can use that for a cover. And this second piece here is also the same, and I'll use that for a cover. And then the rest of this I'm going to cut down into 12-inch or 30 centimetre long pieces, and they will fit directly onto my Cricut mat. So from there I can just cut out some pockets, and the bits that are left over I'll cut some tags out of, and it's already collaged pieces for me, so I don't need to individually collage anything, and I just think they look fabulous. I'm really happy with them. So once I have cut this all down, I'm going to take my covers to my sewing machine. That last little piece isn't quite as long as the rest, but that's okay, I'll use it still. So here's my piece that I made for my cover, and I've just sewn around it with a bit of zigzag here and there, and I'm going to make my cover. So I have measured my cover, and I've actually cut it out of the covers of the scrapbook paper pack that I bought, so I'm using everything. So I'm just using a bit of masking tape to stick it together. So my pages are A4 sheets of paper that are folded in half, so that'll make them A5. And so I just laid down a folded up sheet of paper on top of this card, and then decided from there what size my cover was going to be. So it's a little bit wider and a little bit longer than an A5 sheet of paper. That's as technical as it got. For my spine, I think it's about 6 centimetres wide, so that's probably just over 2 inches. And then I've just stuck it together on both sides with a bit of masking tape. So that's all ready to go. So then I'll just bring back my collaged and stitched piece of paper, all my little scrappy pieces, and I'm just going to stick it with this glue that I have directly to this piece of cardstock that I've cut out. So I'm feeling pretty chuffed with myself, because I'm even using the covers for the scrapbook paper pack as well, so look at me go. So the glue I use, I've recently been switched to, it's Boyle's glue, and here in Australia you buy it from Bunnings, so you know, from the hardware store. But it's good glue, it's good for this. So I'm just making sure that that is really stuck down, because it's got the stitching on it. It is a little bit harder to adhere, so I'm just using my brayer to make sure it's stuck down. Look at that cover, I think it looks sensational. I love it. And then I'm just going to trim straight down. I'm not even sort of covering it up by wrapping it. I'm just sticking the paper on top and then trimming it off the edges. Super easy. I'll keep that little scrap for a tag or something, some tags, something like that. And I'm just trimming down the sides. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing on this blank white side here, which will be the inside of my cover. So for that, I have actually coffee stained a piece of A3 copy paper. I don't know what that would be. It's like A4 paper is the, you know, the sort of metric equivalent of a letter-sized sheet of paper, and so A3 would be sort of twice that size. Of course, we all have to use different size paper, don't we, just to confuse things. So I'm just making sure that little edge is stuck down nicely. Didn't quite get enough glue in there. And you can see that I coffee stained all of those little scraps before I collaged them, so that it has got little coffee stains everywhere as well. And I'm just folding it up, and that is my cover. So now I'm just going to pop some glue on the inside of my cover as well. I always go a bit heavy-handed with the glue. But this glue bottle's actually lasted me quite a while, so having these new smaller little bottles, not that I'm using one at the moment, but I have some new smaller bottles, has definitely made me extend my glue use quite a bit. So here's my coffee stain bit of copy paper. I'm just sticking that down on the inside, making sure I'm happy with that. Give it a good smush. Love the random pattern on that, doesn't it look fabulous? And I love how it still has some white. I really like that. So I'm just smushing that down with my brayer and also my bone folder. And then I'll just trim around the edges of that one as well. This is just the easiest cover to make, so once I've trimmed it out and I'm happy with this, I'll just take it to my sewing machine and zigzag stitch around the edges, and that's as much work as I do. So my sewing machine can handle going through all of that thickness, lucky for me. But that's also, you know, one of the reasons why I used the scrapbook paper cover, because that wasn't too thick, and I also collaged onto that masking paper because that's not too thick, and of course the copy paper is really thin as well, so the thickest area is really the scrapbook paper itself and the stitching. So I'm just running down the spine area there with my bone folder and bending it up, and that's it. I'll take it to the sewing machine and stitch around the edges. And there it is. I've stitched all around the edges and I think it looks fabulous. Just trying to decide which is my top and which is my bottom, which is my front, which is my back. And because it's collaged and quite random, it doesn't even matter. And that's also fabulous when it comes to cutting out your pockets and things as well, because there's just no direction. So you can just squish as much on the on each sheet as you can. So these are my signatures that I've made up. For this one I'm doing 2 signatures, but I have also done journals using this pack of SVGs where I've just done 1 signature and a soft cover. So, you know, you can do any kind of journal you want and then just use the SVGs to make all your pockets. So I like to have straight edges on all my pieces of paper of my signature. I don't really like having those scruffy edges, so I'm just laying it down and trimming it off with my Stanley knife, and I do that for both of my signatures, and then I'm going to sew them into the cover. I just like to use an emery board just to neaten up those edges. I use an emery board for everything. So that's that. So this is my second signature. So they're both ready to go in there. So I just made myself a little template to help me to figure out where my little holes are going to go. So it's exactly the same width and length as my spine, and then I've just measured on that to find where I'm going to put the holes. So I'm having 2 signatures, so I've put 2 holes in, or 3 holes for each signature because it's a 3-hole pamphlet stitch that I'm going to use. And I just like to poke them in more so from the outside to the inside, because otherwise they sort of stick out a little bit. So I'm just using my awl and poking those little holes. And then you get to have a bit of a laugh at me trying to sew my signature in, because everything gets everything gets stuck together. I'm also going to use my template to mark my holes in my signatures. So I'm just finding the middle of my signature, making sure it's all nice and even, and then I'll just put some paper clips on each side to hold it all together. And then my template has also got a set of holes in the middle, and I've just folded down the middle so I just find the centre point for my centre hole, which is nice and easy. because it's an A4 sheet of paper, so it's 21 centimetres wide. So then I just find that centre hole, put a mark there, and then I just put a mark on either side, and it will line up with the holes that I've made in my cover. And then I just poke them through with my awl, or try to. There we go. And I'm going to sew them into my cover using some embroidery thread, and I'm using a sort of a greeny colour. So once I've done that to both of my signatures, I can sew them in. Just fluffing around, trying to get them set up, and then I'm just going to find the middle, that middle hole, and then I can just use my template, because my template's a little bit longer. It's to suit the spine and not for my pages. So if I can just work off the centre, I can work back from there. Poke the holes in there. And then we're ready to go. So I sewed in my first signature and it went, you know, it was okay. I went okay. That's my embroidery thread. And then I sewed in the second one, and I sewed it in upside down so that I had to pull it out and do it all over again. So I'm pretty sure that's a mistake everyone's made, but I did record it, but I've cut it out of here because you don't need to see that. So it does take me a little bit to get all my pages to go onto my needle as well. Well, I get there in the end, but it's a little frustrating to watch, I have to say. Come on. There we go, we're through. So each of my signatures are 15 pages each, and they are a mix of book paper, book pages, coffee stain pages, plain copy paper, but I've used some green copy paper and also some creamy coloured copy paper. There's a sheet of vellum, and then there's those door pages that I cut out earlier. So it's just a little bit of a mix of everything in there. So the reason that I felt like the second signature was sewn in upside down was because the book pages were upside down. Now, I know you're not reading them, but it just looks strange to me that they were upside down. So that's why I had to pull the second signature out and turn it around and put it back in again, because it just didn't sit right with me. So anyway, here we are. We're still doing the first signature, and I've managed to snag the thread through with my needle. You know how you can sort of snag it so that you sort of sewed it back through. So I sort of have to pull it apart, and here I'm just making sure that it's nice and tight, because sometimes you sew them in and they get a little bit, they can be a bit loose. So I'm just making sure that it's nice and tight. Threading one of them under that centre bit and then tying it up. And then I did the same thing with the second signature that I did twice. Anyway, here it is. I've sewn in all my signatures, and after I did that, I went ahead and cut out all my pockets. So I'm just showing you which pockets that I've used, but I'll also put down in the bottom of in the description box underneath this video how many of each pocket I cut out, or I'll try and remember to. So I'm just going through each of them, and because I've got two signatures, I'm just splitting them up into two piles so that I have roughly the same amount of pockets in each signature. It's just, I don't know, maybe that's a little OCD, but that's what I do. So I just cut them out of my collage sheets. It doesn't matter what direction they were in, nothing like that mattered. And then once I'd done that, I just stitched around the edges of them on my sewing machine, just using a straight stitch. So now I'm just going to randomly put them in. So for some reason I decided to do, I think, the second signature first. I don't know why. So I'm just going to go through each of my pages and decide where I want to put a pocket, and there's no theory behind it really. I guess I'm selecting more of the plainer pages to put some pockets on, because once I've put some bits and pieces in there, the pages won't look so plain. I think that's probably the extent of my decision making process. So I'm just putting some glue on those little tabs and then putting it down. So in the pack there are 2 sets of long pockets. These long pockets are the ones that go from the top to the bottom of the page like this. One set is for A4 sheets of paper, so that's what I'm making my my journal with here. So I've used the A4 size pockets so that they fit on there perfectly, but I've also included a set of those pockets, those long pockets, for letter size paper. So if you are in a country where you use letter size paper, you would just cut out the letter size pockets to put on your pages. But I do use the letter size pocket on the inside cover of my journal because it's quite a bit bigger and it fits in really nicely. So I'm just going along putting in my little collage pockets, and the pockets look so awesome, just collage, that I don't even feel like they need much embellishing. When I get to the embellishing stage, I'm just quite happy leaving quite a lot of them just as they are, because I think they look quite attractive just as they are. So I'm just going to go through and randomly pop some pockets down, and as you can see they fit on these pages great, and they will also fit on letter size pages just as well. So once I've finished popping these little pockets here on this signature, I'm going to turn back to the first signature and put those other pockets that I've set aside into my first signature. I've also put aside a set of 3 little pockets because I want to put them all on one page as a stacked set of pockets. So I'm just turning back to my first signature now, and this long pocket here could also be used as a belly band. If you snipped off that little tab or just glued it down to the actual pocket itself, it could easily be a belly band rather than a pocket. So there's that little pocket there, and then I've got a few more little pockets to pop in. So I've really enjoyed making this journal. I especially enjoyed the being able to use up all these tiny little pieces of paper from the scrapbook paper that previously I just couldn't think what to do with them, but I also couldn't part with them, so they were taking up precious room in my craft room. And so from that little pile of papers that I had, I have managed to make 2 full journals, and they're both really quite chunky by the time I finish with them. In the next video, I'm going to make some other bits and pieces using the journal pack of SVGs. There's a matchbook to make a little notebook. There's a file folder. There's specimen slides and rolodex cards, all sorts of things that I'm going to make from these leftover pieces of scrap paper and fill up 2 journals with. So if you're interested, the SVG files are available in my Etsy store, and I'll pop the link in the description box below so you can go and check those out. The SVGs are for electronic cutting machines. I've got a Cricut, but if you have a machine that you can use SVG files with, then you can certainly use the SVGs to make your own journal. Otherwise, maybe you've just feel inspired to make some collage papers and making some big sheets that you can cut down and make into pockets and also a cover. So I designed this set of SVG files just to make creating books and journals like this really easy without too much thinking involved, especially when I'm using collage paper like this, where you don't have to worry about the direction or anything, and that they will fit on books that you make from A4 size paper that's folded in half, but they'll also fit on letter size paper that you can fold in half. So I've really tried to make them useful for everybody who makes journals or books in this size. So now I'm just deciding where I'm going to put my little stacked page. These 3 little pockets that I'm going to put down all on one page. I think I've decided in the middle of this first signature. So these are the smallest pockets, and I'm just going to stack 3 of them up together. Of course, in your book or journal, you can do any of those fancy little flips and folds and things like that. There's lots of YouTube creators out there who do all sorts of fabulous journals and do all sorts of things. As I say, this is just a tool to make creating easier. It made it easier for me, so I hope that if you're interested, it makes it easier for you too. And in the next video, I'm going to do some more pockets that I've got in the journal pack. There's a CD pocket, there's a trifold pocket, a slot pocket, there's some bags and rolodex cards and slides, all sorts of things. So I'm going to be putting those into this journal in the next video. So I hope that you will join me in the next video to see all of those little bits and pieces that are going to go into this journal. Otherwise, thanks very much for sticking around right to the very end, and I hope to see you in the next video. Otherwise, have a great day. Thanks for watching, and bye for now. Bye.